Hey, what's up, y'all? My name is Stevie Matt, and today I'll be talking about Soul. Okay, not Soul Glo, but Soul, Pixar's latest animated film, released Christmas Day 2020, and co-directed by Kemp Powers and Pete Docter, and co-written by Powers, Docter, and Mike Jones. Mike Jones. Okay, no, not that Mike Jones. At least I don't think so. Anyway, welcome to It's Not That Deep. Wow, what a damn movie, right? It's such a good story about passion and purpose, and it is so refreshing to see someone older like Joe being given this space to explore themes like this in an animated movie, no less. So the physical world is just gorgeously rendered, right? So I love all the little touches that make it feel authentic to his character, from Erykah Badu playing in his mother's shop to, the barber shop. It's a cultural touchstone, and his relationship to his barber. It just all felt very black. And, I am always hesitant to, say that and give those kind of, representation points, TM, to movies that not only have a white co-director and co-writer, but also just have Disney's name slapped all over it. But I'll get into that later. Here, I'll just say that it did feel very authentic to this black man's life and environment. And the spirit world, this like the great beyond and great before, as sort of this like secular, amorphous, theoretical space where souls are sort of prepared for a physical existence, it was very clever. It was brilliant, really. You have Terry sneaking around as a white line that just sort of brightens into place. That was cool. The Jerrys are this sort of abstract form, and you have the little soulings or spiritlings. I don't know. They were really cute. It was really creative and imaginative, and the personality badges looked just like the personality boxes in The Sims. They were very much giving Sims character creation screen, and I'm not sure if that was actually where they pulled that visual reference from. I would not be surprised in the least. I just want to know what happened to gay men, just so many men, so little personality. Can somebody patch me through to Jerry's direct line? We need to have a chat about how many gay men he's been allowing to skip the personality houses, because child. But anyway, enough about my love life. I just really love the conversation the movie has about passion and purpose, and how it's just like, no, you silly humans and your meaning of life obsessions. No, it's just your spark. And I interpreted that to mean I interpreted that to just mean the thing that makes you want to live, right? It's not like the thing that you have to do. Your life doesn't have to revolve around it. And if you don't build your whole life and identity around it, it means you've somehow failed. It just means this is the thing that makes you happy to be alive. And instead of framing Joe's teaching as something that's holding him back from his true passion, we see that a lot. Instead, it's actually his artistry being addressed here, because it has grown from passion and is starting to creep into obsession levels, right? Chasing this dream has consumed his entire life, and what I think is great is how they illustrate how this impacts his personal relationships. Particularly we see it with his barber, where he doesn't know anything about this man that he has been seeing for however many years, because he's never asked. He has simply always talked about music. That's all he talks about, his thing. And that's where the lost souls come in. Lost souls are not that different from those in the zone. The zone is enjoyable, but once that joy becomes an obsession, one becomes disconnected from life. And I think pairing those two concepts together, pairing those two ideas together, illustrating how they're two sides of the same coin, was really brilliant. And I think that line really captured the whole essence of this film. Joe was not quite a lost soul yet, but he was chasing this one singularly defined dream, and it was causing him to lose connection with the world around him in the process. What I appreciate is that the narrative doesn't make him choose between, the riskier path of becoming a musician or the more practical path of becoming a teacher. But it's about him learning to appreciate everything else around him along the way. So maybe he'll continue playing with Dorothea, which he's always wanted, or maybe somewhere in that final montage he realized that he also is really good at culminating a love of music in children like Connie, and he'll continue being a mentor. Or he'll find a way to do both. That's not really the point. The point, the final line of the film, is that whatever he chooses to do, he's not going to ignore the other joys around him. He's going to enjoy every minute of it. And that's really beautiful. It's lovely. It's also not a theme particularly suited for a younger audience, right? Like, this is probably not a kid's movie. It's very much, I'd argue, a movie for adults. And that's okay. It touches on, it actually touches on one of my life's greatest anxieties, which is, I am very much not one of those 30 under 30 success stories. I'm 32 and still trying to sort of figure out my life path and my path to success. So, like, not to get all Ayanla fix my life, but, like, ending up like Joe, where it's, a middle-aged man who, right when he gets his big break, finally, he dies right after. Like, that's very much a real fear. It's like it taking your whole life, and then finally you get it and bloop, now it's all over. So, yeah, that touched on something real. And that's okay. I can't reiterate this enough, that animation is not inherently a children's medium. I think this movie really exemplifies how the medium can be utilized to explore more mature themes like purpose, passion, the afterlife, existentialism, etc. Of course, it has Disney's name all over it, which means we immediately think of it as being for kids, and they'll probably market it that way. But, and of course, to be clear, this is not a pro-Disney account. I very much despise them as an evil corporation whose, like, near monopoly and stranglehold on the entertainment industry really needs to be dismantled, like, asaptually. But while we're here, I would really like it if, like, it would be cool to see Pixar sort of being able to transition. I really hate that Disney was able to acquire them in the first place. I've always been mad about it. But it would be nice to see them be able to branch off and sort of transition into more adult-themed, mature-themed animation like this, and where the Disney animation movies like Big Hero 6 continue to be targeted towards younger audiences. And that could be what separates the two names, since you have, like, Disney and then Disney Pixar, which is just like, y'all let things go for once. I hate y'all. But that would be really cool. And that with movies like Up, they kind of already have that going, because I think it seems like they have a knack for luring adults in via children with all the, via their children with these cutesy animated characters, and then completely ripping us to shreds emotionally and leaving us, the movie ends and we're sitting there contemplating life, the universe, and everything, while the kids just sort of bounce around happily talking about talking cats and dogs. It's like, I don't know, maybe that's their niche. It's rude as hell, and I love it. Like, more mature themed animation, please. Now, I do have one major issue with this movie. If you're not aware, there is this emerging trend among animated movies where black characters spend the majority of the movie outside of their bodies. So it started, or at least we first noticed it with Princess and the Frog, where Disney's first black princess spent most of her time in the movie as a frog. Then you have Spies in Disguise, where Will Smith's character gets turned into a bird. And now you have Soul, where Joe spends most of his time in the movie either as an amorphous blob or a cat. But here's the thing about this movie specifically. Joe's body is present on screen for most of the movie. It's just not always Joe inside of it. Now let me derail for a second and talk about the cast. You have Jamie Foxx voicing Joe, Felicia Rashad as his mother, Richard Ayoade as one of the Jerrys, Questlove as Curly, Angela Bassett as Dorothea. All black actors, and many of the voice actors who aren't black aren't white either. Rachel House, who does the voice of Terry, is Maori, and Alice Braga, who does another one of the Jerrys, is Brazilian. And, like, I looked at, she might be white Brazilian, I'm not really sure, but at least here in the US she would be spicy white. So the only major character in this movie that is voiced and even explicitly coded in the dialogue as white is 22. The character who will spend the majority of the movie inside of Joe's black-ass body, voiced by Tina Fey. So, any white actor would have made for a really icky racial dynamic here for me, but Tina Fey in particular has gotten in trouble for blackface and has had other instances of anti-blackness, so her voice coming out of a black man's mouth for the majority of the movie was just, I didn't like it. It was just very troubling. And that's the thing, if they had just cast another black actor as 22, there probably would have been no issue for me whatsoever, right? There are so many black characters strewn throughout the movie, and again, Joe's body is present on screen for most of the movie, even if his spirit is inside of the cat. And so in that way, it kinda, arguably, emphasis on the arguably, bucks that emerging trend. And if they simply cast another black voice to come out of Joe's mouth, it all would have been fine. I would have had no issue, and I could have focused on the story. But there are some poignant moments in this film that are not just significant to Joe, but culturally significant to his blackness, namely the scene with his mother and the scene in the barbershop, that feel not just robbed from him, but also from us by having a white woman experience it through his body. The barbershop is just more voyeuristic in that it is just a white character being invited into this cultural space. And in that scene with his mother, they do have his voice coming out of his mouth as sort of a visualization of Joe speaking as the cat through 22, and visually that was an effective choice because it highlights the fact that yes, 22 is currently occupying his body, but he is still very much experiencing this revelatory moment with his mother. And so that was a clever choice, but it's knowing that a white woman is inside of his body at this pivotal character moment for him. It just felt wrong. And again, if 22 had just been voiced by another black voice actor, I really would have had no issues with it because thematically I really like the reciprocal dynamic between the two characters. 22 is realizing that their spark is somehow connected to a sensory experience that they just cannot get at the youth seminar, and through that Joe is also rediscovering his joy in the world around him. But giving it this racial dynamic touches on another trope that has a lot longer history and narrative, which is the magical Negro trope. Now, it doesn't quite fit here because, 22 is actually the unborn soul, so 22 is the magical character, so to speak, and Joe is actually the human here, but it still very much has that dynamic of a black character servicing the growth of a white character. Remember I mentioned earlier that I had an issue with this movie's directors and writers? So both directing and writing credits were split between Pete Docter and Kemp Powers. So I was curious about the process, and I looked it up, and I came across this article, which I will of course link in the description below, that explains that this was not originally a black-led film. It was actually going to be originally 22's story, and everything else came a little after that. Docter brought Powers in when he realized that the story had to revolve around jazz, and if it was going to revolve around jazz, Joe had to be black. And between Powers and a team of cultural consultants, they were able to infuse the movie with the authenticity that I had described earlier. But here's where my issue comes in. When he realized that this needed to be a black story, why couldn't he have just stepped aside completely and given Powers complete creative control, right? It's weird to me to have to constantly run this story through not just a team of cultural consultants, but also the former director of the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of African Art, instead of just letting black people tell our own stories. And so much of the article describes how Powers had to break all these little elements of black culture down to him before he realized their significance and included them in the story. And so it's just like, this is what I'm talking about when I say that these stories are filtered through the white lens, through the white gaze. And we see this a lot with these animated movies that are coming out of major studios like Disney and DreamWorks, and they are really, marketed on diversity, TM. And you look behind the camera and you see that there's a white director and a white writer. Accurate casting is important, and I'm always happy to get talent like Jamie Foxx and hear Richard Ayoade's iconic voice. I love him so much. But that's also, baseline, right? That's the bare minimum. That's why I always look at the writer and director, because that's where the creative direction of the narrative is going to come from. That's who's driving the story. So that's all I got for you today. Soul was a beautiful, creative story about purpose and passion, and a great example of how animation can explore more mature themes. I just wish that 22 had been voiced by a black actor, and that black creators have been given complete creative control over this story instead of having to filter it all through a white dude. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button down below. Feel free to leave a comment. And while you're at it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you never miss another one. Check me out on Twitter and Coffee for more ways to stay up to date and show support. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you in the next video.